In the grim darkness of the future, there is only war. The universe of Warhammer 40K is one in which the Imperium of Man finds itself constantly battling against Xenos and heretics alike. Chaos Space Marines, Orcs, Tyranids, Drukhari, Chaos Gods, the Tau Empire, and Necrons are just some of the most formidable foes that humanity faces on a perpetual basis. Let's just say that, unless you're a genetically engineered member of the Adeptus Astartes, or Space Marines if you prefer, there's a strong chance your life as a human will be a brief and extremely painful one. If you're lucky, that is. Yep, I'm not mincing my words here. If you think death is the worst thing that can happen to you in Warhammer 40k, you're sorely mistaken. For example, if you run into some Dark Eldar and are unfortunate enough to be captured, the things you will experience as their slave will make death look like a blessing. Warhammer 40k is brutal, to say the very least. Entire planets teeming with life are consumed by ravenous Tyranid swarms, and in other cases, if the forces of chaos manage to corrupt the planet beyond saving, the Imperium will opt to destroy it completely using Exterminatus. Rest in peace, Dolamar 4. The many different battles that take place within the Warhammer 40k universe occur on many different levels and involve all kinds of different factions. While some of the bigger conflicts happen in the far reaches of space or on the surface of hostile alien worlds, others are being fought in the many cities and halves that make up the Imperium's domain. In Warhammer 40k Darktide, you'll find yourself exploring and cleansing the half city of Tertium on the planet Atoma Prime, which has allegedly been infiltrated by the forces of chaos. But who exactly will you play as in Darktide? Will you be taking on the role of an elite space marine? Perhaps a sister of battle? Or maybe an Adeptus Mechanicus? Well, no, actually. In fact, the heroes in Darktide are known as the Rejects because they're criminals and, general scum, really. And are these heroes serving the Imperium nobly of their own volition? Even if they aren't, it's best if they loudly proclaim they are. That's because they've been recruited by the Inquisition to investigate the events occurring on Tertium and find out if all the rumors about plague, heresy, and all that grimdark chaos stuff is actually true. Spoiler alert, it is. So much like Darktide's predecessor, Vermintide, the game is a 4-player co-op FPS where you will face off against hordes of AI-controlled enemies. As such, you'll be able to choose from one of 4 different classes, namely Veteran, Sharpshooter, Zealot, Preacher, Psyker, Psykinetic, and Ogryn Skullbreaker. Let's briefly look at each of these classes and what you can expect if you decide to play as them. Veteran Sharpshooter. If you decide to take on the role of a veteran of the Imperial Army, you'll definitely want to practice your aim since long-range combat and accuracy is key with this class. Armed with a Cantrail Mark 7 lasgun and frag grenades, the veteran is best at picking off enemies with well-placed headshots. Moreover, they're particularly effective against elite and special enemies, so they make an excellent addition to any team. However, if you get into close combat, you'll have to use your trusty shovel to push enemies back, and as you can imagine, it's not quite as effective as the lasgun. I think that as long as you keep your distance, work with your teammates, and get those critical shots, you should be fine. Hopefully. Zealot Preacher. Armored by their steadfast faith in the God Emperor of mankind, Zealots wield the combat axe and auto pistol to defeat the heretical enemies of the Imperium. Zealots revel in the pain they feel, so the more damage they take, the better they will perform on the battlefield. This class is made for fast-paced, close-quarters combat and is particularly effective against armored opponents. In addition, it's pretty good for crowd control as well. While Zealots may be fiery and aggressive, they are not immortal, so you'll still need to exercise caution when playing as one of these devotees. But know that, in your suffering, the Emperor shines his divine light upon you and imbues you with the strength and conviction of the Imperium. Psyker, Psykinetic. Reaching into the warp, Psykers possess powerful psychic abilities and are able to crush enemies by using the power of their mind. The starting loadout for Psykers consists of a combat sword as well as a stub revolver. They're most effective against elite enemies and, much like the Zealot, aren't half bad at crowd control either. Psykers possess the special ability to literally explode the brains of their enemies. By killing an enemy using Brain Burst, Psykers store a warp charge, which reduces peril generation in proportion with the total number of warp charges. Be warned that, if peril rises too high for the Psyker, they're at risk at being driven mad or consumed by the corrupt powers of the warp. So not only will you need to worry about enemies, but your own insane abilities as well. While the warp possesses immense power, its effects are highly unpredictable. Ogryn Skullbreaker. These big boys aren't particularly bright, but that's actually one of their greatest qualities. Ogryns are massive meat tanks that will happily charge headlong into a group of enemies and laugh with glee as the punies are crushed into dust. Ogryn start off with a huge club as well as a shotgun known as a thumper. Ogryns are great at absorbing damage and dealing with large swaths of enemies, and in boss fights they make a very convenient distraction. Using their patented bull rush, Ogryns charge into crowds of bad guys and send them all flying back into the holes they crawled out of. Ogryns are best in melee combat, and when combined with other classes, they can make all the difference in a battle. As for the enemies in Darktide, well, in the Tertium campaign, it's actually one of the nicer Chaos Gods, believe it or not. Nurgle, the Lord of Decay, is intent on spreading his pestilence and rot through disease, sickness, and festering abominations. In Tertium, players will be up against the Admonition, a chaos cult of plague worshippers who are surrounded by poxwalkers and backed up by all kinds of nightmarish creatures. More specialized enemies include scab gunners, scab snipers, trappers, the dreaded poxhound, and mutants. Elite enemies consist of maulers, crushers, reapers, and bulwarks. FYI, they're generally big and slow and do massive damage. Then the bosses you can expect to face off against in Darktide, at least for now, include the Scab Captain and the disgustingly terrifying Plague Ogryn. Ugh. There's so much to cover in Warhammer 40k Darktide, but just so you know, the battle for Tertium is just the first campaign players will get to enjoy. According to the official website, in the coming weeks, months, and years, Darktide's universe will expand and introduce new classes, missions, enemies, and allies for players to enjoy. Does this mean you'll get to face off against other Chaos factions in the future? It's impossible to say for sure, but hopefully that's on the cards for new content. Also, in terms of the 4 different classes that currently exist, players will be able to customize everything about their character, including their backstory, appearance, and even the voice lines they'll use in-game. What's more, you can pick the talents that best suit your unique playstyle and choose from a wide variety of weapons so that your Darktide experience is as close to home for you as possible. Warhammer 40k Darktide officially releases on November 30th, 2022, but if you purchase the pre-order beta, you can start playing from November 17th. Darktide is a thrilling, claustrophobic, and intense co-op action shooter that promises endless hours of fun for players. I, for one, can't wait for the official release and look forward to all the content they have planned for the future. So what do you think of Warhammer 40k Darktide? Which class is your favorite? And what enemies do you want to face off against in future updates? Let me know in the comments. Please like and subscribe and hit the bell so we can keep bringing you more awesome content on the regular. Later!